Good morning, everyone. It is quite lovely out this morning. We are finally in fall. Happy fall. And I thought it might be kind of fun to show you what has happened in my garden. There's a lot of construction sounds, so hopefully you don't have to listen to any of that, but we're just going to keep going. So first, if you're new here, let me just go ahead and give you a quick recap of the situation. So I bought my house in December, closed on it in December, moved in January, and I knew she's a cute little fixer-upper. She's almost 100 years old. We will be celebrating 100 years in, I think, 2 more years or something like that. I'd have to double check. So she's old. She's got that craftsman style cottage bungalow vibe. Not cottage, I guess, bungalow. And basically the previous owner was a landlord who not only didn't do much, but did things wrong. So that's been fun. The water heater was really old. It was from 1994, and fortunately the pilot light went out and I couldn't find the igniter, and I managed to relight it myself, but I have a warranty for this year on all of my appliances, so I went ahead and I contacted them, had them come out, figuring they're gonna be like, it's too old, we can't find an igniter to put on this, so we're just gonna get you a new one. That sort of happened. Basically, the previous owner, could have been somebody before him, but I'm gonna guess, removed the overflow valve from the water heater. Now, if you're like me and you don't know what that is, or didn't know what that was, it basically is a pressure release type situation, prevents the water heater from potentially going boom. So, things like that. My latest struggle, spiders. Not just any spiders. Black widow spiders. This infestation of black widow spiders has obviously been around for at least a couple of years and was not addressed. So I'm addressing it, which is so much fun. So one of the other things is that the previous owner obviously never did anything with the yards. That's not really that big of a deal, just a lot of work for me, but that's okay because I kind of have my own ideas of what I wanted to do. So back here you can see I've built up my food garden. I've been trying to do a little urban homesteading type deal because groceries are so expensive. Goddamn. So figured I could grow some of my own produce, which it has flourished, and that has been super exciting. This year has been unusually rainy, especially earlier on. It's dried out a little bit, but it was kind of nice because I didn't have to water stuff as much, and things did really, really well. Now, I fully overpacked these garden beds, but I think it turned out okay anyway. So let me show you what I got. All right, so in this garden bed, which actually the bed itself was originally here, it was the only bed that existed, and it was back on the far side of the garage. And I think it had just some random stuff in it, along with some sweet pea, vines and flowers. Those are kind of everywhere. So moved this over here and then started filling it with dirt. Now I had to get this dirt out of the way anyway because I had to create some trenches across my yard. My yard is graded slightly towards my house, which is super fun. So I'm putting in swales, basically, and swales are used to direct water. And I'm putting in a couple across my yard. So I put dirt and compost into this bed from that. And I have planted rainbow chard and kale in this bed, which you can see has done really well. And I have harvested from this fully. This is not the first batch. Oh, my knees are old. There we go. I'll just sit on a pillow. It'll be great. If you hear meowing in the background, it's just my kitten is getting FOMO. She just figured out that I'm out here. So I've got kale and chard. If you saw one of my previous videos, I've already done a pretty massive harvest of a lot of this and blanched it and froze it. It gave me 4 full frozen like gallon-sized bags. And keep in mind, like when you blanch greens, they shrink up. So 4 gallon sizes of that. And I still have more to harvest. I'm not done. I would say greens are probably the most difficult vegetable to preserve. At least of like the common veggies. Just because you have to wash them and make sure you get the bugs out of all the nooks and then blanch them. And it's a long process. But then in front of them, let me see if I can tilt this down and show you. I planted onions. Now, I don't remember exactly what this variety is called, but it's a red variety that tends to grow a little bit taller, so it looks a little more like a shallot. And its flavor is, I would say, between a red onion and a shallot. These are delicious. I planted them a little too close, but again, there was way too many things crammed into this bed, so it is what it is. So some of these are really, really small. Some of them did turn out pretty good size. I've already harvested a bunch. I have started curing a bunch of them. I just haven't finished the process. Totally keeping an eye on the squirrel that is making its way slowly over to me. So if I die because of a squirrel attack, at least there will be a record. So anyway, so those have been delicious. Now I also try to use all parts of what I'm growing. So with these red onions, for example, a lot of times I will cook with the green tops. Less so now because they're getting a little dry. That's what happens when the onions are ready. But earlier this year, while the onions were still growing, I would cut them off kind of like you would, and use them like you would with like green onions. Whew, sunshine. Okay, so on this side, this is the same garden bed, just the other side. Now on this side, you can see these really pretty white flowers. Those are from my garlic chives. And those, let me kind of show you how those are growing. There's a bunch of those. I originally had those in pots inside. And they did okay. It was fine. But they have flourished since being brought out here, which is awesome. And you can see more kale. You can see where the overcrowding is. Underneath this kale, in this kind of section here, I had actually grown shallots. There were certainly not as many as the onions, so it did fit better there. The shallots grew okay. They didn't get like crazy big or anything like that, but they're super, super tasty. So I've already harvested all of those. I have a few left that I have cured. So those I don't know if there was much point in curing them because there's so few, I'll probably use them pretty soon, but I've cured them. I've used a bunch of them. They're delicious. I did the same thing with the green tops of those where I would use them like green onions. And those were freaking delicious. There's also some spinach somewhere in here. And I forget that I have spinach because it's hidden away. It's tucked away in there. FYI, kale and chard get really big. And I knew this. If you ever can't find my body, check in the kale and the chard. So the other fun thing I'll kind of show you on this side, you can see those tall green oniony looking things. Those are green onions. Yeah. So there's different types of green onions. There's some that I don't think get quite as beefy as these. These get very beefy. So the fun thing about these are all literally just green onions that I got at Trader Joe's in the package, used the green, like cooked with them. You just don't cut, you don't cut into the white part of it. And it only works, obviously, not all of the green onions that you get in those packages have roots still on them. But as long as they still have roots on them, you don't cut all the way into the white and you just plant them. And you can do this inside. You can put it in water. You can put it outside, whatever. And it'll start growing more green onion. So I do this, we'll see if these overwinter, but I just do this because it's a really cost-effective way to start growing green onions. And then you're like super set. I did not expect them to get this big. At this size, you kind of have to be picky choosy about which ones you use because they can get a little woody, like the older pieces. But yeah, I will never want for green onions. Now, this garden bed here is my newest one, and I have planted some late crop, whatever it's called, veggies, like fall crop. So in this one, there are 2 types of spinach. There's bok choy, cilantro, broccoli, and leeks, and I am pretty sure that's it. You can see some of this stuff coming up. So let's see if I can point that little cluster there. That's the cilantro. Over here is the bok choy. I'm pretty sure that some of those coming over there are leeks. Not 100% sure. The spinach has also started to come up. And then there's also some things in here that are definitely weeds. The tall, grassy looking thing over there is actually bluebell. There's bluebells all over my yard. So in filling these garden beds with dirt from my yard, inevitably I get bluebells. There's also bindweed galore. If you could cook and eat bindweed, I would never go hungry. I mean, I guess you maybe could cook it and eat it, but I don't think you'd want to. So yeah, it's never ending. Bindweed. So much bindweed. Now another thing that I did this year is I got a ton of mulch, and I put that down in both my front yard and back here in these garden-y type sections. This came from a company called Chip Drop, and basically they work with local arborists, because the arborists will, chip a tree, cut it down, mulch it up, whatever, and then it's just easier for them to give the chips to someone that is in that same area so that they don't have to transport all of that back. So it's a little bit of a challenge. It's free mulch, but you don't know what kind of trees you're going to get. You don't know what size kind of mulch it's going to be. You don't know when you're going to get it. You don't know entirely how much you are going to get. You just know that you can get up to 20 cubic yards, I'm pretty sure is what it was, which is a lot, by the way. If you don't know how much that is quite a bit. I would say like the size of a Mini Cooper, just to give you a reference, maybe a little more. It's a lot of wood chips. So I did not quite get 20 cubic yards, which is fine. I still got most of that. It was plenty. But yeah, put that down. We put cardboard down. My mom and my dad, we worked on this a lot, moving all that mulch. We put cardboard down first over the top of the sections where I wanted to lay this, and then put a few inches of the mulch, and that helps to kill off some of the weeds. Obviously not the bindweed, because bindweed is eternal and it will live far beyond any of us, and the planet will eventually just become bindweed. But a lot of the other stuff, like the thistle and the grass and things like that, did not come back through the cardboard and the mulch. I'm very impressed that the bluebells, or the hyacinth, not bluebells, the hyacinth did. Hyacinth is apparently much more resilient than I thought it was, which is fine. I plan to give some of them away, move them. They're everywhere. So it's going to be a bit of a process. I'm not really sure how the hyacinth started here, because literally they're all over my yard in random patches. So anyway, Chip Drop is great, but yeah, you definitely have to be open to the journey. It took a few months for me, I think 2 months maybe, for me to get mine. And it was kind of one of those where they just day before, they're like, hey, by the way, we're going to have some chips for you. We'll drop those off tomorrow. Hope you're ready. So I'm sitting in the middle of my garden beds at this point. So I'm just going to kind of show you, I'll give you a close up of this one in a little bit. That is a zucchini. I have 2 zucchinis, and they have produced, well, this one actually on this side hasn't produced a whole crazy amount. The one on the other side that I will show you has produced quite a bit, and I am still drowning in zucchini, which is fine. I need to do some more prep in it, maybe freezing it for the winter. My goal is to just be able to use as much from my garden as possible to reduce my grocery costs, even into the fall and the winter. So I got the zucchini. I also have 2 tomatoes in there. One is when I got it said cherry tomato. They're kind of big, but they do have a certain cherry tomato-ish growth. So I'm not 100% sure. It's pretty tasty. They're not my favorite tomatoes, so I don't think I'm going to collect the seeds from those and grow them again. I'm going to try something else, but they were fine. I did manage to find, however, my absolute favorite tomato, which is called a copia. And copias are like sweet, and they're kind of a nice combo of meaty and juicy, and they're just, they're so good. They're so good. Sadly, the copias don't produce a whole bunch. I have, however, collected the seeds, and I will be planting several of those next year. I was very much overambitious with this garden bed back here. It's just a little square one, kind of like the one that I showed you that is the newest one with the fall crop. So it has, well, let me tell you what I planted originally in it. I planted the 2 normal zucchini, 2 8-ball zucchini, which did not make it because they just did not get enough sun, 2 tomatoes, and then 3, I had these seeds from these Italian frying peppers that I just freaking love, and they actually grow pretty well in pots too, heads up. So I tried to sprout those. They didn't do great, so I had planted 3 of the seedlings that survived in there. 2 died. 1 has made it, and it has produced 1 single frying pepper. It's a good one. I mean, it looks gorgeous. It's done good work. But basically, I just won't get to eat that one because I need the seeds to try to do this again next year. So that is the entire purpose of that plant this year, is simply to produce me an excellent pepper that I can harvest seeds from. And then I also put 2 strawberries in that box. No, actually, I put a bunch of strawberries. Only 2 made it in that box. And I will kind of show you my thought process behind that. But yeah, way too much in one little square box. I was overambitious anyway with a lot of this, but that was just... All right, and then in my final box, so I started with just the one with the greens. That was the very first one I had. That was the only one I had for a little bit, which is fine. That's kind of why I was overcrowded, is because I put all of my like early season cold crops in there. And then I worked up to the 2 others. So this other garden bed is a long one. I've got alternating the long and square, because let me sidetrack. The reason I have alternating sizes is the long garden bed, like I said, already existed. That was already a thing. The square ones are actually repurposed wood. There was a compost bin, and I say that because they threw kind of like everything in there that like it was very strange. It was also full of like potting soil, which is not something that you put into compost. It had like whole corn on the cobs, uncrushed eggshells, things that are going to take years and years to break down. And then you have to turn compost because it has to like be hot. You have to, if you're putting a lot of dry materials in, you have to put water on it. It's a process. And they basically just like, we'll just do a compost pile, and then threw stuff in it and then never did anything with it. So compost bin. So it was made of these shorter pieces of wood. It's like, I think 3x3. So I repurposed that into 2 garden beds, which is why I have mismatched garden beds. This one here, I had to buy the wood to make, and I have more wood to make more, but at least these 4 have gotten me through and started this year. Over in this one, I have some more chard growing because I need more. So much chard. I also planted a potato off to the side. That potato, I kind of did the same tactic with the strawberries of poking it out through the side. I think there's more potatoes. I've had some of the potatoes. They're pretty tasty. I think there's more in there. I just need to dig them up. So I'll get to that. I also put cucumbers in there, and I actually had to go back and buy more cucumbers because the ones that I had put in were doing really, really not well. And then some of them kind of rallied, and so then I just ended up having kind of too many cucumbers, but then they were struggling. I got a lot of powdery mildew, which is a thing that can affect especially squashes, but it can affect a lot of different plants. I have powdery mildew on a few different things, and I didn't get to it soon enough, so I just have it this year. Next year, I will take the preventative measures and get that taken care of. So those cucumbers have not produced as much as I hoped, but they still have done pretty well. Pretty much the only ones that survived were all the lemon cucumbers, which are super delightful and tasty. It's an heirloom variation. So I get a bunch of those periodically. And then you can see I've got peppers over here. These are actually yellow bell peppers. They came in a 6-pack and they have just gone crazy. They're starting to turn now, so that's super exciting. I will have to pick them all before we hit our first freeze, which is probably coming up here pretty soon. So I'm gonna have to pick some probably while they're still green, and then I'll just find different ways to like roast them and preserve them and freeze them and all that stuff. So I'll be able to use those for flavors in the winter. This guy right here. I thought this was a cucumber originally, but it was growing so weird. And then I learned that it wasn't a cucumber. And the strange thing is that I could not remember what it was. I had no recollection of buying anything else. And at first I thought, oh, maybe it's a melon, because I've been wanting to try to grow some melons, and I remember looking at melons when I was at the plant nursery. I didn't really remember buying a melon, but I was like, maybe that's what it is. It was not a melon. It was a golden acorn squash or sunset acorn squash, some sort of something like that. It's a variation, but it's yellow. I don't think I bought that. Maybe I did. Maybe I just blacked out and I bought another squash, but I have no recollection. And you'll understand too, when you see my front yard, why I really don't think I would have bought another squash. So I'm wondering if it maybe just a seed made it into one of the cucumber packs, and that's what happened. It was fine, it produced really small squashes that taste pretty similar to acorns. It wasn't really anything like to write home about. They're pretty. The color's pretty. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, so here you can see, so there's that first zucchini like I was talking about. And you can see all the tomato action happening in here. This is chaos, absolute chaos. And then over here, we've got this zucchini. Let me back out so you can see it in its full glory. Yeah, so it's coming over the edge of that garden bed. I steered it that way because it was just growing so insanely well, and I have trimmed so many leaves off of this. And I think that is one of the tricks actually with growing zucchini or any squash or any cucumbers even. Go ahead and trim leaves off of it, because if the plant is not putting energy into the leaves, it'll put the energy into the fruit. So kind of my general rule of thumb, I cut off obviously ones that have the powdery mildew on them, but also if the leaf is behind the fruit, like anywhere on the stem, the main stem behind the fruit, just cut those off and leave the leaves that are newer. What's also fun is that is a strawberry right there. So the strawberries I set up so that they would poke out the side. They did end up kind of coming up through the top anyway, but I have 2 strawberries in here, so we'll see. They didn't produce this year because they were just little baby plants, but we'll see what they do next year. And then that pepper that I was talking about, pardon me, excuse me. So there's that pepper plant with its one pepper, and that pepper will turn red when it's ready. But yeah, it's a good one. It's definitely going to be a good one. but that's all I'm gonna get off of that this year. So it is what it is. And on this side, you can see there's one of the copias growing. I actually need to pick that pretty soon. I try to pick my tomatoes before they fully ripen because I avoid splitting, first off, the tomatoes splitting, and also then I can get them before the squirrels do. You can see the lemon cucumbers have just kind of overflowed. I directed them out of the box. These are vining. And I think next year I will try to figure out some sort of trellis situation because they definitely grew a lot farther than I expected them to. But let me show you what the lemon cucumbers look like. So that's a little baby one. Let's see. Here's kind of a better sized one down in here. So they grow to about the size of like a tennis ball. Very yellow in color, slight lemony flavor, and then they're very pokey. You have to actually kind of wash the pokey bits off of them, but they're super tasty. They're a nice little snack. Oh look, more kale. Some other things that I planted this year. I planted 4 different types of raspberry bush, and only one of them survived, which is fine. It happens. But yeah, this little guy, he's doing the best he can. And hopefully next year I'll get maybe some raspberries. Probably not a lot, but they do grow pretty quick. So there's also a bunch of plants that I planted this year, knowing that I won't get to harvest them until next year or possibly the year after. I think most of them I'll be able to harvest from starting next year. I'll just have to, not go crazy. Some of those items are fruit trees. So I planted several fruit trees to get those started, and then also artichoke and asparagus, and I'm pretty excited. So let me show you what those are doing. Oh, and rhubarb. Here is my artichoke. And there's actually a few of them growing on this. So there's one down in there, and there's also one kind of behind that leaf. You can see a little bit of the purple back there. Now these I will not pick. I will just let them bloom. This right here is a cherry tree. It's got 4 different types of cherry on it that have been grafted onto this trunk. It's not doing great. It's struggling a little bit. Those are my rhubarb plants. They have grown so well this year. I probably could have harvested this year, but you're supposed to let them sit. So I've let them sit. You can see they're kind of chewed on. There were so many bugs this year, and the amount of grasshoppers and then Japanese beetles. It's been a struggle. So they've chewed on that stuff a bit. You can see the vines kind of behind them. The Japanese beetles really enjoyed those. It's just, it is what it is. It's part of nature. Here, there are 3 asparagus. You can see those kind of leafy, feathery looking plants. That is what asparagus looks like. They're doing their thing. I had put them in pots before because I had accidentally let them. I bought roots for asparagus and they dried up too much. You don't get asparagus the first year anyway. But yeah, I kind of thought like, oh, I won't get them. I let them dry up too much. They're not going to survive. 3 did. So I finally, now that it's gotten a little cooler, put them in the ground out here. There's also, I just scattered some radish seeds around this, so those I can see are maybe just barely starting to poke through the dirt. So I'll get some of those soon, but yeah, hopefully I'll have some asparagus in a year or 2. This luscious beauty is my peach tree. Now this is a miniature peach tree or something like that. It's like a miniature dwarf peach tree or something, I think is what it's called. So it's definitely not going to get very big, but that's okay. I just would like to enjoy some delicious fruit. Now it's always a little bit of a risk to go wandering around my yard because there are some stray cats that live in the area. You know how house cats are very picky about where they go to the bathroom, right? Like they like corners and covered things, and that's why you have litter boxes that have enclosures around them. These guys, DGAF, they will just park it right in the middle. I've watched them just stop middle of my yard, squat, and go. So I can see there's some cat poop right there. So I have to be very aware of that. There's stuff you can scatter around the perimeter of your yard that will help prevent that. And that's just not been high on my priority list as far as pests to keep out of my yard. You can kind of see those big leaves. So you've got fallen sunflowers right next to it, and then of course a bunch of bindweed that I need to pull away. But those bigger leaves, that is a fig tree. And I thought that it had died, but it actually managed to survive, and it has grown quite a bit this year. So I'm super excited about that. I don't know if I'll be here long enough to get figs from it, but that's okay. I'm kind of setting this up for whoever moves in next. So here I've got some of my herbs. So that is just a regular like green, I think Italian basil. And then next to it is a Thai basil with the purple stems and flowers. I love both of those. They're delicious. The Thai basil is amazing in a lot of different Asian inspired meals that I make. And then I've got parsley, also one of my favorites. I like to throw that into a lot of things. This is a blueberry bush. You might be wondering why it's in a giant sphagnum brick block here. Blueberries don't grow super well in Colorado because it's dry. They like acidic soils. They like, water, stuff like that. So a master gardener from, I can't remember which college out here, has actually played around with it and found immense success by growing his blueberries in these basically bales of sphagnum moss. And he just plants the whole damn thing, plastic and all, in the ground because then it traps moisture in there and the blueberries really thrive. I have not obviously planted mine in the ground yet because that is a rather large hole that I am not looking forward to digging. But the blueberry bush has actually done really, really well. You can see a lot of new growth on there. When I first planted it, it was just a tiny little sprig of a thing. So I'm pretty excited about that too. Not food related, but quick shout out. I got a bunch of tiny trees from Arbor Day Foundation. They just come as bare roots. They're like little first year shoots and stuff. Some of them did not make it. Sadly, I was really hoping to plant a flowering tree up front and none of the flowering ones made it. But I've got these guys. So the river birch, I didn't think made it, but then it started going down at the bottom there. So I'm just going to let it do its thing. That's a red oak, which has been thriving. Sugar maple. There's a blue spruce and a pine back there. Not my favorite. I'll probably find somebody to give those to. Boxwood that I got for ridiculously cheap. And then you can see some of the other trees that did not, unfortunately, make it. I also planted a red maple out front, and then one of the flowering trees that didn't make it, the red maple, I will show you shortly. But these were basically $10 for 10 trees. So it was kind of a low price to see what took. The red maple will stay and thrive at this house, hopefully. And then when I move, I will take these other ones with me. And if I need trees, then I've already started them. And I didn't have to pay $150 for a larger tree. This here is an apple tree. It's another one that's got grafted pieces. So it's got 4 different types of apple on there. One of them is not doing great, but the others seem to be doing okay. It looks the way it does because it was recently pruned to try to put focus on some of the other branches because the Granny Smith apple, which I don't like those apples, was doing excessively well. So hopefully some of the other apples that I do like will get some of that energy. I had planted another apple up here, but it sadly did not make it. And this one with the weird little plume at the top, this is a pear tree. This one seems to be doing okay. It is leaning, which is not fab. I'll have to probably stake it for a little bit, but it's doing its thing. It's vibing. And here you can see why I said I did not intentionally spend money on more squashes. So I had a bunch of seeds. I still have a bunch. I haven't used them all, that I just kind of scattered everywhere in a experiment of let's see what comes up. A bunch of them were squash. I'll show you some of the other things that I planted, but yeah, this is my front yard and the squash has gone crazy. Bonkers. It's so exciting. I've got pumpkins. I've got the weird, like, knobbly looking squash that are just for funsies. You don't need them or anything. They're gourds, technically. Let's see, there's sugar pumpkins. There's some white pumpkins, again, decorative. There's butternut. I'll show you that in a moment. I think that's it. But as far as edible, it's pretty much just the butternut and the sugar pumpkins or whatever pumpkins. There's the little maple tree. So that's the red maple. The dirt, obviously not great up here, so it's not growing as fast as its other buddies, but I did put down some coffee grounds and better compost. So that's helped it a little bit. So you can see over here, there's even more pumpkin growing up against the house there. You can see that squash. That is the butternut. So that butternut was not planted intentionally. I think a squirrel moved a seed. And it was kind of, I thought it was a watermelon for a while. But you can see its butternuttiness in there. What's really exciting is actually, I don't think it's a butternut. I think it's a honey nut, which is a squash that I've seen a couple of times at Trader Joe's. Saved some seeds because it's freaking delicious. And I'm pretty sure that's what that is. So hopefully it grows a little faster because we're getting close to that first freeze. Which squash should be a little bit hardier, like the winter squash, but not that much, so. And then down here, I've got some flowers along with some random tomatoes that took. I have no clue what kinds of tomatoes these are. They've been growing, but they're going really slow, so I don't know if I'll actually get to have any of them or not. We'll see. There's some more basil in there, some more Thai basil, and I think regular Italian basil. The sunflowers have done good. So you can also see I have a tree right there. So that tree is another apple tree. I don't know what kind because it didn't have a proper tag. Mystery tree that basically they were just trying to get rid of. So I was like, well, okay. That's where I was going to put my flowering tree that didn't, or I tried putting it and it didn't live. So apple trees flower, I'll just have more fruit. And then down here, I grew radishes in the spring, let those go to seed, and now there's more radishes coming up because they just kind of scattered themselves. So I'll get some more radishes, hopefully pretty soon here. They're growing, but again, we're getting close to that frost. I also grew turnip tops for the greens. I don't like turnip greens, I have learned after this year, but some of them did actually grow turnips, so I've used some of those in soups. There were a couple of parsnips. There's one still in there. Rutabagas, those were freaking delicious. I only got really one that I could actually enjoy. I have old knees. I can't squat down that long. There was also bok choy that didn't do terribly well, but I just went ahead and let it seed because it had really pretty flowers. You can kind of see some of that, so we'll see if I get any of that next year. These yellow flowers with these kind of lacy looking leaves, those are carrots. Now the carrots did not do well. I tried pulling some of them up and it just super woody, not very flavorful, all that. So I did the same thing. I just went ahead and let those go to seed. And we'll see whether or not I get, actually those haven't even done seeds yet. They're still just flowering. And they're just so pretty. So if you want like a pretty flower, do some carrots. We'll see whether or not those go to seed in time. That's another one that's just kind of taking its sweet time. And then on this far side, I've got, I'm pretty sure collard greens, but I'm not 100% sure. Again, I scattered a bunch of seeds. Not everything came up. I think I had scattered some cauliflower too, so I originally thought that maybe that's what that was, but I think it's collard greens. And then down here, there's some little bits of celery. The celery has been slow growing. Again, this dirt out here is not great, but I have been able to at least lately use it for some soups, and it's more focusing on just adding some flavor to the soups. I have a bunch of pumpkins that I don't think are going to turn orange before the end of the season. So my mom actually found that you can cook green pumpkins, and you do it when they're like dark green and they're kind of zucchini-ish, but like almost better. So, and they work really well. They work really well in soups. So there you go. Fun fact, trying to use everything and not waste stuff. So thank you for coming along with me on that tour of my veggie fruit garden stuff. I know that's kind of, this is a bit of a longer video, but hopefully it was kind of just a chill, relaxing journey through a lot of the stuff that I've worked on this year that has been very exciting. Next year, I have a lot of plans to regrow a lot of the stuff that I grew this year. I also really want to grow some sunchokes. They're also called Jerusalem artichokes. I don't know, I've seen a lot of people that are warning like, oh, they're impossible to get rid of once you get them. And I'm like, good, yes. They're delicious. That's what I want, for them to keep coming back so I can keep eating them. So I'm going to do more of that. I definitely want to grow some more root vegetables because those have been really fun to put into soups. And probably less kale. I also want to try okra. There's just a whole bunch of cool stuff out there. So I'm excited to see what happens next year. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments and I will congratulate you because it's been a while. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps in the algorithm. If you want to see more of the things that I'm working on, definitely go check out my other videos and subscribe. Otherwise, I hope you have a fabulous day. You're fabulous. And I'll catch you next time.